nice house, on a nice street, in a nice neighborhood. Nothing extraordinary about it at all. Or so thought Ed and Mary Woods of Vancouver, Washington. But that was before the peculiar noises and the eerie encounters with things that go bump in the night. At first it was almost imperceptible. A quiet rattle, a slight chill, the barest whisper of a presence. Until some 7 months after Ed and Mary moved in.
I've heard the sound of a music box. It was very faint. I went into my husband's office and looked around. There was no sign of anything in there, but I kept hearing it. And it wasn't something I heard in my mind, like you would imagine it. It was an actual sound in the house. I thought somebody had opened up a music box and it was playing.
The first time I had an experience where I noticed something actually happening, I was sitting in my office with the door closed.
Mary had warned Ed that there was something very odd about the house. But Ed just assumed his daughter was playing a prank.
I thought I'd surprise her by opening the door. There was nobody there. I checked and everyone in the house was asleep.
I called University of Washington because they have a seismograph station down here in Vancouver monitoring the fault lines from Mount St. Helens. They told me at that time there were no fault lines running through the area. There was no underground aquifer. There was no weakness that could account for any type of movement in the house other than normal settling that will happen with the house as it gets older.
But if Mother Nature wasn't responsible, then who or what was stirring up all the trouble? Mary was about to find out.
I actually saw the figure of a woman. She was about my height, wearing a stark rounded bag and like a long flannel nightgown. I was not scared of her. I did not get the impression that she was mean. I was startled. Somebody comes out of the hall and you're going, hey. But no, I was not frightened of her. I was just startled by her.
After several encounters, Mary decided to do a little research.
I have been able to identify her through going through records. She was a former resident who had died in the home of a prolonged illness. She had died of cancer. The latter part of her life towards the end, because of the heavy radiation chemotherapy, she wore scars because she had lost all her hair. And she had practically lived in flannel nightgowns. I get the feeling of protectiveness, like she's watching over the kids. Going in, checking on the kids, making sure they're okay. I found out later that her children were in the same bedrooms that my children are in. And it could be she's just looking for hers.
It didn't take long for word to get around. The house on 37th Street was haunted. Even the local newspaper wrote it up.
About a week after the article came out, I received a phone call from the mother of one of my daughter's friends. She had known the woman who lived in the house prior to us. She had helped take care of her before she died. She asked me if I'd ever seen any pictures of her. I said, no, I've never seen any pictures. She said the two of you could pass as twins. She said that might be one of the reasons that she's attached herself to you. It's because you're about the same age as she was when she passed away. The two of you look quite a bit alike.
But the lady in white was just the beginning.
The first thing I actually saw was a man standing in the living room. Looked like an old riverboat gambler with a ribbon tie and mustache. You look at him twice because you're not too sure if he's going to do something. He never moves, though. He's always perfect perfectly still, just looking down the hall, but he seems just very inimical, like I wouldn't want to cross this guy.
Yet another apparition, seen by both Ed and Mary, is far less sinister. They call her Pinky.
Pinky is a little girl, 8 to 10 years old. And once in a while, you hear her giggle.
First time, I thought it was our youngest daughter. We'd been sitting in the living room watching movies, and I thought it was my youngest daughter giggling at the movies. So I looked down and realized she had fallen asleep in front of the TV and was sound asleep, so there was no way.
For Ed and Mary, the extraordinary was becoming commonplace. Consider the spirit in the shower. Never seen, but definitely felt.
Ourselves and many people that have been guests of ours who have taken baths or showers have found themselves accompanied in the shower by a friendly hug and general body rub that seems to be quite female in nature. Doesn't seem to matter if the person taking the shower is male or female. Just somebody who's been gone a long time, I think, and missed some of the things that the world had to provide.
When Ed's son came to visit, he got the welcome of a lifetime.
We went in, took a shower, came out, and the first thing out of his mouth is he looked at his dad and said, "Okay, what's with the shower?" Honestly, I thought they were teasing me. I thought they were just giving me a line about the ghosts. About a week later, I went in and took a shower and got a very friendly hug, and I came out and I looked at my husband and I said, "I think your ghosts like either sex."
According to Ed and Mary, the ghostly activities in the house often go beyond shadowy specters and gentle caresses.
4 or 5 years. But it's ridiculous. What?
Now you'll hear a crash in the bathroom when you walk back in. Everything will be laying down on the counters or on the floor. Nothing ever seems to be broken.
You'll see things being moved around, rattled, pictures being moved almost every day for about 3 or 4 months, and then it'll die down for a couple of months. I've come to accept it just under the fact that there are things in this world we can't explain.
As far as the Woodses were concerned, there was little doubt. The house was haunted. They called in an expert in all things paranormal, professional ghostbuster, who willing to conduct a thorough investigation. Perhaps he could make some sense out of the house on 37th Street.
Let's go ahead and move down the hallway here. Now, I want you to both you tell me this is pretty much where it's the lady wife and where things happen.
Lloyd Arlen, a lecturer and writer, has been investigating paranormal phenomena for nearly 2 decades. Our cameras were on hand when he paid his first visit to the house. Auerbach came armed with an open mind and an instrument called a magnetometer.
The magnetometer I use is sold for detecting whether or not you have electromagnetic pollution. It's not a ghost detector by any way, shape, or form. It's a good indicator that there's a physical connection in the environment to their experience. That helps validate that they're not completely making it up in their minds. Helps me understand that they're not completely making it up in their minds also. There's some correlation.
Auerbach painstakingly made his way through the house.
Okay, now we got a reading again.
In several areas, the magnetometer is spiked without explanation. Most notably in the back bathroom,
Fairly high.
the living room,
I'm getting something in the corner.
and the hallway.
I'm getting actually a high reading again. High energy reading. I'm sorry. This could suddenly spike up. This is a very unusual pattern that we're seeing here that seems to relate to the phenomena, or at least to the sensation of it, but doesn't seem to relate to anything else. So I can pretty much rule out the physical environment causing this. You know, like a generator under the house somewhere.
No!
Over the years I've done investigations, I have started feeling things myself. I wouldn't call myself by any means a psychic, but I would say that I'm becoming more aware of my sensitivities, and I tend to get a sinus pressure that often makes me feel like I need more oxygen, which makes me yawn or start feeling tired, and then happening to me on a cyclical basis while I'm here, and it was connected directly to the magnetometer reading. Somebody's around right now. In the sense
Well,
of,
once in a while. I sat up there with an odd correspondence, I guess, with the spike in the meters, and I'd get a real cold feeling or a chill down the back of my neck, or the hair on my arms would raise up, like goosebumps. It didn't happen all the time, but on several occasions, I felt like there was somebody in the room. I don't know if I'm just picking up on things that have been going on, or if there actually was somebody there. No, this one I've seen several times, but he's been at the end of the hallway.
Was somebody or something there? Perhaps a few agitated spirits trying to bridge the gulf between the dead and the living. Lloyd Auerbach believes it is possible, but by no means definite. Ed and Mary Woods, however, have moved beyond possibility to certainty. The stories we have examined are still shrouded in mystery, still waiting on one final clue that will unlock the truth. Perhaps someone watching can shed light on these perplexing cases. Perhaps that someone is you.
tonight on Unsolved Mysteries.
Married only 3 months, Michelle Witherall died in this tragic fall. Her husband said it was an accident. Her family believed she was murdered. It was a whirlwind romance with a bitter, ironic twist. The groom was a convicted killer serving life in prison until he convinced his new wife to help him escape. Now her children would like to find her, and the police say she is free to come home without fear of punishment. Party time in Tijuana. But for this college student, the revelry proved fatal. Was Jason Artis hit by a car, or did he anger the Tijuana police? Carl McWilliams is friendly and personal. He is also a fugitive on the run from statutory rape charges. Police need your help. Experience a world of mystery, heartbreak, and intrigue. Join me for Unsolved Mysteries. Cold winter night in a small town near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The broken body of Michelle Witherall lay sprawled on the asphalt outside her apartment. Michelle was just 24 years old, a newlywed. She and her husband Jeremy had been living in Pittsburgh since their marriage 3 months earlier. They had moved from their home in Denver, expecting to build a new life. Now Michelle was in critical condition, bleeding heavily from severe head injuries. What happened up there?
I don't know what happened to me.
Jeremy Witherall told police Michelle had fallen from their balcony 3 flights up. He said he had been playing solitaire there in the living room of their apartment when he heard a sound. He stepped outside, looked over the railing, and saw his wife's body on the ground below. Paramedics rushed Michelle to the trauma unit at a Pittsburgh hospital. It was December 20th, 1992, just 5 days before Christmas. Within hours, Michelle's parents claimed Jeremy's mother called them with the awful news, and a second version of his story.
She told me that there had been a terrible accident and that Michelle had been out on the balcony at their apartment and that she'd been putting up Christmas lights and that the balcony had collapsed, causing her to fall.
Michelle and Jeremy Witherall had planned to go home to Denver for the holidays.
Looking for Michelle Witherall?
Instead, Michelle's family flew to Pittsburgh on the first flight out. The left side of Michelle's head was fractured, and she was in a coma. In addition, her jaw was broken, but strangely, her nose and teeth were unharmed by the three-story fall.
At that very moment, I think questions were beginning to come into our thoughts. How did she get her eye busted open and her jaw broken with no damage in between?
The Mellons believed Michelle knew they were with her and tried her best to let them know.
We really think that her squeezing his hand, she was telling us goodbye.
And then the doctor walked in from the back and said that, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to leave. Michelle has died.
It would seem only two people in the world knew how Michelle had been injured. One of them was now gone. Michelle's parents claimed that moments later, Jeremy Witherall came up with another version, a third version of how she felt. What happened, Jeremy?
We just got home from dinner, and I was playing a game of solitaire. And Michelle and I, we weren't even talking. And then she went out to the balcony for something. And when I looked up, there she was hanging. And I should have got her. She was just barely hanging there. I could have got her.
Jeremy Witherall declined to be interviewed. However, he claims he gave just one version of Michelle's fall, and he only discovered she had fallen when he saw her body on the ground below. The Mellons still insist they were given three different stories. Three stories for one. Who was right? According to detectives, the Witheralls were having trouble in their marriage. They say Jeremy admitted arguing with Michelle that evening while driving back from a restaurant, an argument that continued at home. Neighbors say Michelle and Jeremy had been fighting frequently, fights so loud one neighbor complained repeatedly to the building manager.
Violence is what she called it, physically throwing each other around the apartment. And somewhere in the area of 1 to 3 weeks before Michelle's death, she came into my office and said, in no uncertain terms, she said, someone's going to get killed up there. And she was very frightened. She was scared.
And then I ran out to the balcony and looked over, and there was Michelle.
The Mellons became more and more suspicious. They began questioning the police investigation.
When the detectives would start out by saying, well, Jeremy says, our thought was, well, you guys are homicide detectives. You were called into this evidently for a reason. Now, if all you're telling us is what Jeremy says, what's the point?
If this man is a suspect in a homicide, and by his own admission, he said he was the only one there, then why would you take his word?
The Mellons found troubling inconsistencies in Jeremy's account. One, Michelle's wrists were broken, but her palms were completely unscratched. If she fractured her wrist trying to break her fall, her palms should have been cut. Two, one of Michelle's shoes was discovered 26 feet from her body. The other shoe was never found. And finally, Jeremy Witherall took the time to double lock his apartment before allegedly racing to his wife's side. Unscathed palms, a missing shoe, a locked door. Melamas wondered why. According to the police, Jeremy Witherell took not one but 2 polygraph tests. They say he passed both. The Allegheny County coroner officially labeled the cause of Michelle's death as undetermined. Homicide, accident, or suicide. The Melamas insist that it couldn't have been suicide.
Michelle had a high regard for life. Michelle was a happy person. Michelle had so many goals in life, and when she had made the statement to me about separating from Jeremy, she had dealt with the situations in her marriage that she was not pleased with. And she had also made her plan on how to remedy those situations, and that was to separate and ask that Jeremy get professional help.
The Melamas also believe the accident theory was unlikely. The balcony was 48 inches, chest high from Michelle.
The wall was too high for anybody to lose their balance. It wasn't a poorly constructed balcony. It was very adequate in height to prevent something like that from happening.
Michelle's parents had her medical records to 3 board-certified forensic pathologists. Their unanimous verdict: Michelle was murdered, but possibly not by a fall. According to forensic experts, if Michelle had fallen 3 stories, she should have had injuries on both sides of her brain.
The head injuries that Michelle Witherell demonstrated at her autopsy were quite extensive, but these were all left-sided. These injuries are what we call true direct impact injuries, as from a blow.
Wax says Michelle's other injuries also indicated an